is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were the hearing, where would be the smelling? But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body, just as he pleased. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now, indeed, there are many members, yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor, and our presentable parts have greater modesty. But our presentable parts have no need, but God composed the body, having given greater honor to that part which lacks it, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another. Please be seated.
We've had a very good weekend with Ron and Don, and we're thankful for their willingness to come and be with us and share their knowledge and their years of research and work in these areas. We have truly been blessed and continue to be so blessed today. If they have written a couple of really good, excellent books on grief that are available. They're on the table in the fellowship building. If you'd like to buy one of those, if you'll see me, we will get that taken care of. Also, if you would like a copy of the handouts from yesterday's sessions, if you will sign up on the table in the foyer, there's a sign-up sheet there. We will get you copies of everything from yesterday. Hope you can stay and have lunch with us and then join us for the final session. Yesterday, we had a biography available of Ron and Don that's in the handouts. I'm not going to take the time this morning to read all their credentials and all that they are involved with. They're very active in the Lord's work. Best thing we can say about them is what I said in Bible class. They love the Lord. They love people.
Eric, the youth minister, passed the lit candle to Sean. He told Sean that he appreciated his great leadership in the youth group there at Creekwood in Alabama, and how much he appreciated him being there for Eric and all the others. It was now Sean's turn. Who would he pass the candle to? It was a program in which they were trying to build affirmation and connectiveness to the youth group. And Sean thought for a moment and handed it to one of the new children, young people that were in the youth group for the first time. Her name was Amber Lee. And he said he appreciated Amber Lee always singing out when they sang devotional songs and praise to God. Later on, Amber Lee said that Sean Frazier would never know how much it meant to her that he had honored her in that kind of way. A few months later on December 8th of 2015, Sean Frazier, at the age of 20 years old, had a fatal malfunction of his heart for reasons unknown, and he died. And everyone was heartbroken, and all were paying tribute to his memory. And Amber Lee wrote these following words about Sean and his kindness to her. I thought I was invisible. I thought I was unknown. I thought I was unnoticed. I thought I was alone. Then he said some kind words. He said them about me. He said, I lifted him up. He did the same for me. He made me feel included. His words just touch my heart. He passed the candle my way, and then I felt I was a part. And she went on to say, thank you, Sean Frazier, for being one of the first ones to make me feel like a true member of the Creekwood family. When one member suffers. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul is trying to get the brethren to know that in the midst of many fractions of differences of opinion and practices of life, that there was only one body that Christ was concerned about, and it was that one body that they were each a member of. In Romans chapter 12, Paul will say in verse 15 that we are to rejoice with those who rejoice, and then we are to weep with those who weep. This morning, for just a few moments, we'd like to talk about the latter part. When one member hurts. The fact of the matter is, we're all going to hurt at one time or the other. Perhaps you know someone, or maybe you've been one of those individuals that have heard the following words from their employer. Thank you for your 30 years of faithful, dedicated, committed service to our company. We really appreciate you being there for us these past 30 years, but we're downsizing, and we no longer need your services. Or perhaps at one of your announcements for this congregation, would you pray for Miss Betty as she undergoes yet another round of chemo in regard to her cancer that has come back? Or maybe sometime, would you pray for the Smiths as they go to Texas to take care of arrangements for family members that were killed in a horrific car crash there? Or perhaps you have heard the phrase from some doctor, I'm sorry, but they just did not make it through the surgery. And could it be that there's someone here in the audience that has said something like this to their parents? Mom, Dad, we're no longer pregnant. I lost the baby in miscarriage. Or perhaps you, along with your siblings, have had to make the comment, you know, we're going to have to do something about Mom. She's not much lucid anymore. We're probably going to have to move her somewhere closer to each one of us. When one member hurts. Sometimes when I study a text, I'd like to go to other translations that I do not use in my presentations and much study, just to sort of see how they translate that particular verse. For example, in the Bible in Basic English Version, you read, and if there is pain in one part of the body, all the parts will be feeling it. Or if one part is honored, all the parts will be glad. In the Aramaic Bible in plain English, you read, so now when one member shall suffer, all of them shall share the pain. And if one member rejoices, all the members shall rejoice. You see, Paul was trying to get the Corinthian church in the midst of all their issues to remember that they belong to each other. But here's the problem. The problem is that most of us tend to be me, myself, and I centered when it comes to other people's problems. Now, if we know someone, if they're close by to us, we probably will do something. But it's very easy for us to think that it's somebody else's job. We have elders, that's their ministry. We have deacons, that may be their particular part of ministry and programs that they're involved in. Oh yeah, we've got those ministers that we pay. It's their job to take care of people that are hurting. Now, it may be that if it's someone that means a lot to us, or someone that's prominent, or someone that we've known for a long, long time, we'll typically do something within our own comfort zone. But unfortunately, the latter is just also happens. If we don't know them very well, if we never met them, if we sit on that side of the building and they sit on this side of the building, sometimes we just sort of think, well, somebody else will take care of it. What was it that Paul meant when he said, when one member hurts, all of them are hurt together? You may recall on one occasion that there was a lawyer that came to Jesus, Luke chapter 9, and he said, what's the great commandment? What do I need to do? And Jesus said, well, here's the commandment, and here's what you're supposed to do. And then this lawyer, wanting to justify himself, said, okay, now, tell me who my neighbor is. And Jesus began to give us that parable of that wonderful Samaritan. By the way, did you notice that we are the one who adds the word good to it? He's not called the good Samaritan in the text, but he obviously is very good because of what he does. But Jesus tells about a man that comes down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he's robbed, he's beaten, left for dead. And then there's the idea of the man, the priest that comes by, and he just sort of glances over that way, and he keeps going. And then the Levite at least goes over and looks at him, but then he passes on as well. And then the Samaritan, the one that the Jews would have called a half-breed, the one that they would not have anything to do with at all. In fact, when they were traveling from the north to the south to the north, they would go far out of their way just to avoid going into the country of those detestable people of Samaria. But he comes. You know the story. And he goes and he gets down off of his beast of burden, and he begins to take ointments and things to bind up this man's wounds. And he begins to put him back on his own beast of burden, and he goes to the end and he gives money to the innkeeper the next morning after spending all night long with that man. And he says, anything that I owe you, I'll come back and pay for. And so Jesus asked this lawyer this question: which of these three do you think showed mercy to the man who fell among the thieves? And did you notice that the man would not even say his name? He just said, the one that showed mercy. And Jesus looks that man in the face and he says, you go and do likewise. And I think the message there for us, besides the idea of helping and the need to help, is that we're supposed to do the same thing that this lawyer is supposed to do. We're supposed to go and follow this man's example. You know, the Bible is filled with admonition after admonition as to what we're supposed to do to others. Job 14:1, man born of woman born of woman is of few days, and he's full of trouble. He's got all kinds of issues. And Solomon talked about in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, two are better than one. Why? Because they have a good reward for their labor. But then notice, if they fall, one will lift up the other one. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. And likely in this audience this morning, there are individuals that have been in scenarios in which that very thing has happened. Someone you loved, or perhaps even you yourself, were in a situation when you had fallen, and there's no one to help you. John chapter 16, verse 33, these things I've written unto you that you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. Romans chapter 12, be kindly affectionate, be in love with one another, with brotherly love, in honor giving preference, choosing one another in regard to our care for them. And then finally, among many other passages we could turn to today, 1 John chapter 3, my little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. In other words, don't just talk about care for others, show it. You see, when we are alone, it hurts worse. Remember when you were a little child and you skinned your knee or you did something and mommy and daddy were not anywhere to be found? And brother and sister probably made fun of you and mocked you, and why are you crying, you little crybaby? That was just sort of adding on, sort of gas to the fire. It just made us feel bad. Because we didn't have anyone around us that cared for us and the situation that we were in. And those of us who are older today, it's still very much the same. Hearing words like there is nothing else to be done, much more debilitating, much more serious, much more discouraging when it's said when we're alone. Or being at an oncologist appointment and receiving an unfavorable diagnosis. So much more horrific when you're there by yourself. The Apostle Paul, just like you and I, knew what it was to be alone. In 2 Corinthians chapter 7, Paul has written the first letter. He's waiting to hear back from Titus as to how that letter has been received by the brethren there. And in chapter 7 of the second letter, we read these words. For even when we came into Macedonia, our bodies had no rest, fighting without and fear at every turn. But God, who comforts the downcast, comforted us by the coming of Titus. And not only by his coming, but also by the comfort with which he was comforted by you, as he told us of your longing, your mourning, your zeal for me, so that I rejoice still more. Did you notice what the text said? Paul was torn up. He was by himself. He was wondering, what are the Corinthian brethren going to do with the letter I sent them through inspiration of the Spirit? How will it be received? He had said some pretty tough things about their many problems. But God, who comforts the downcast, sent Titus to assure Paul that what he had said and how he had said it had been received by joy and love of that Corinthian church. Let me ask you, for those who have dealt with dementia or cancer or some kind of other debilitating illness in your life or the life of someone else you love, when do the demons come out somewhat to possess you? To capture your thoughts, to tempt your faith, And the answer is in the darkest of the night. When there's no one else around us. And that's the point, and that's what we need to realize and understand. That when we think about other people, when we think about their situation of life instead of that of our own, think about their having to deal with their demons, wherever they may be, all alone. Thus, when you study 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and following, it says to us as a church, to elders and deacons and ministers and ministry leaders and all the others, we have to somehow, some way stress that every single person in our church family is just as important by God, to God, as anyone else is. As Paul said, Christ has many members, but there's only one body. And for that matter, then, every member, regardless of how small, insignificant, regardless of how unimportant you think that you may be, you are essential for the church body at this place to be able to function the way God intended it to be. Now, what it says to me personally is this. If I remember that I'm to hurt with other individuals, so that the church, this church, where I preach in Lincoln and Huntsville, where Don works with a church in Florence Boulevard in Florence, Alabama, in order for the church to work the way it's supposed to, the way God intended it to be, first and foremost, it won't be just about me. And thus, when I walk into the doors of this building, it will not be, what am I going to receive today for me only? That's not the only concern. It will also be, what can I give today to others as I work and worship together in this place? It will mean that I will work at being interconnected, not independent, and there's a huge difference there. We'll try to get to know the people on the other side of the aisle or the other side of the row. We'll introduce ourselves to someone and get to know them. We're having a church fellowship meal in just a few moments. Sit with somebody that you typically don't sit with. Get to know them. Likely you'll find out that you have something in common, and you do have something in common. His name is Jesus Christ our Lord. The result, Paul says, there's no disconnect in the body. There's no disharmony. Everything functions the way it's supposed to function. And therefore, instead of Christians that have to hurt alone, we'll all hurt together. Now here's the point. We're all going to hurt. With us, with others, or without them. Because nobody can take away the pain of some disease like cancer or ALS or some other kind of... No one can actually just do that from us being together. No one can reconnect the brain neurons from someone whose brain is deteriorating because of dementia. People that are afflicted are going to hurt. But how much better, how much greater, how much more helpful it would be if we were able to have others to hurt with us. Robert Browning Hamilton wrote these words. I walked a mile with pleasure, she chatted all the way, but she left me none the wiser for all that she had to say. I walked a mile with sorrow, and ne'er a word she said. But oh, the things I learned from her when sorrow walked with me. I have an idea in this audience this morning. There's someone that is hurting. We may not even be aware of what pain you're having to deal with. But likely somehow, some way, you're looking around and you're wondering, is there anybody out there that cares? Is there anyone out there that will come to my aid like the Samaritan did? Is there someone out there that will, as it were, hand me a lit candle and say, you belong here? And I want you to know how much I appreciate you. This morning, if you're not a child of God, couldn't think of a better time and a better opportunity for you to become one. Maybe you've already done that, but you need to come back and start again with this church. Maybe you just need to say, I'm hurting. I need your help. We sing the invitation song to encourage you. Won't you come together? We stand and sing together.